Well, what do you know? This vampire movie is actually a perfect film for Easter weekend. Isn't that crazy? This is probably certainly one of the best and probably the most aggressive example I've ever seen of using genre clothing to sell what's actually a very intellectual film with very strong commentary. You're like, I'm going to go see this new vampire movie. And they're like, bam, think about stuff. And you're like, whoa, we'll see how that goes over with the general public. I enjoyed it, but it certainly was a surprise. Not to say that the movie doesn't have genre elements in it still, but it's primarily a film about stuff to think about. And I think that's fascinating. And one of those things is religion. And it focuses on the complex relationship that so many people have with religion, particularly today. Now, I don't know my Bible that well, but I was pretty sure that there was a quote in there about sinners. So I Googled it. The fact that this movie is making me, someone who believes in God but isn't particularly religious, think about the Bible and start looking it up. I mean, that says something for the quality of the film, right? I mean, that's pretty darn good. But yes, sure enough, some of you might already have said down below in the comments, the Bible does have a quote about how we're all sinners. And I think that's probably, I would wager that's where the title of this movie comes from. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. And Coogler definitely has a plan here. By the way, please note, there's a whole lot of sinning in this movie. Not like HBO levels of sin, but definitely a hard R. And not just for vampire shenanigans. I bet you Ryan Coogler really knows his Bible. And for those of you who do, I'm always curious to hear everyone's thoughts about the movies and TV shows that we talk about. But I clearly can see that there's a level to this film that's only accessible to people who really know their Bible. And as someone who's very keenly interested in what Ryan Coogler is saying here, I'd love to maybe hear some of because again, I don't know my Bible very well. I would love to hear, for those of you who do see the film and know your Bible, some of the connections that you spot. Now, obviously, the film also explores many aspects of the Black community. Exceptionally well done, from what I can tell. However, I think that the film, to a degree, is relatable to anyone who feels a sense of belonging and responsibility. Responsibility is key to a community or group. I think that was very well explored. It's hard to wrap your head around this film. As I said, it starts out as a standard period Western, very well made. Then it turns into an experimental film that you would maybe see in a museum or Epcot. I was like, what's happening here? And then it became a vampire movie. But to Ryan Coogler's credit, it works. Partially because it's just well done, but also because, especially if you're a cinephile, you gotta appreciate the bold swings. You're like, wow, Coogler's, that's not just one bold swing. He's got like several bold swings here. And that's really cool to see. In many ways, it is similar to Lovecraft Country and the new Interview with the Vampire. Amazing show if you haven't checked it out. Which Interview with the Vampire, both those things really have a lot of similarities to Sinners. And so I think that's a little bit tough for Coogler that this isn't so much a new approach on the surface level. But I think where it becomes its own thing is, again, how strong the commentary is. But both of those streaming shows seem larger in scope than this movie does. And I wondered why Coogler's film refers to so many cool things that happen before the movie starts instead of starting the movie a little earlier and showing those things. I was like, oh, that sounds good. I would have liked to have seen that. Oh, that sounds also really good. I would have liked to have seen that as well. So maybe, we'll see what the box office ends up being for the film, but maybe it would have benefited Coogler to start the film a little earlier in, the timeline. But I thought about why he made this creative decision. Because again, Ryan Coogler is a very smart and an intentional filmmaker. And I believe that he did it to show how for this group of people in 1930s Mississippi, a poor Black community, their world is small. And that the movie really does a wonderful job of conveying that. It's really brilliant. And again, Ryan Coogler is a filmmaker, is meticulous and genius. So, if this movie is meant to feel small, is it worth seeing on the big screen? Absolutely. And here's why. First off, it's stunningly filmed in IMAX. The movie looks really good. The press screening was in IMAX. It was a baby IMAX. It wasn't like a true IMAX, but it made a difference. The movie is very strong. visually and with the sound design. So I think it's worth, if you can get to a premium screen, I think that's the way to see this movie. And while these people's world might be small physically, their dreams, hopes, desires, and sadness are all big. And all that emotion is vividly brought to life in these big images. And also, the movie eventually, you'll see, kind of opens up a little bit. Not totally, but you start to see it, pushing at those edges, which is also, again, they can make you feel that subtly without being overt about it is really strong. So there's a mid-credit sequence, which I loved, which were definitely so good. So good, the mid-credit scene. I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but I liked what I got. I liked it a lot. And then also there's supposedly an end credit scene at the very end after the credits have finished, which I didn't know about, so I missed it. And so I'll have to go back and see it again. I wish at press screenings they tell us to stick around for how many end credit scenes there are. So the next reason to see it, that it's worth seeing in theaters, is that like Church or a play, Sinners could definitely be a stage play. I mean, it would be very excitingly staged with probably some VFX and stuff like that. But on Broadway today, they're doing that all the time. But it did feel a lot like it could be a play. But I think that in that regard, it's meant to be a communal experience. And I think that the energy of your fellow audience members will add to the experience of seeing this film. Also, you don't want to get spoiled. There are a lot of twists and turns in this film that you're going to want to experience for yourself. I think it's fascinating that Ryan Coogler made a deal so that the rights to this movie and potential franchise will revert back to him and his family in 25 years. In 25 years, Warner Brothers will lose the rights to this film, and they'll be owned by the Coogler family. And, not only is this the first deal of its kind in Hollywood, but it reminded me of Mr. Sylvester Stallone. Now remember, Sylvester Stallone and Ryan Coogler are already tied together through Creed. Really moving story about how Ryan Coogler grew up watching the Rocky movies with his father. He wanted to add to that story and develop the Creed family, and he revived Sylvester Stallone's career, and also in the process helped his own career move forward substantially. And then, of course, went on to do the Black Panther films. Now, as I brought up at the time, some of you think it's not a big deal. I thought it was a pretty big deal. Stallone forgot to thank Coogler in his Golden Globes acceptance speech. Coogler never made a big deal about it, but they haven't really worked together since. But remember that Stallone, for quite some time, has been complaining about how he doesn't have the rights to the Rocky franchise anymore. Well, that he ever did. He really felt that since he created Rocky, he should have those rights. His family should have those rights, particularly because the Stallone family is having some financial difficulties. So I wonder if that inspired Coogler to ask for this deal. Very, very, very clever. And very clever of him, even if he and Stallone maybe don't get along anymore, to learn from that. He still clearly has an eye on. Well, everybody heard about Stallone's complaints. Stallone made sure of it. It's complex. We've talked about it before. I don't agree with Stallone. You make the deal that you can. And Stallone, by the way, when he made Rocky, he was a nobody. He never could have gotten that kind of deal. Ryan Coogler is coming off of the Black Panther movies, and that's why he was able to make this deal. And it's a very strong deal. Stallone maybe should have been a little nicer to Ryan Coogler. Should have thanked him in that speech, because he could have been in this movie, maybe. Really missing out. The setup for Sinners is, again, on the small side. I was surprised, actually, how small the setup feels. It's twin brothers, often on the wrong side of the law, who come back home, back down to Mississippi after several years up north in Chicago, let's just say working with the criminal element. Again, I would have loved to have seen that. And they're trying to go straight, to a degree, and open up a juke joint, aka a nightclub in the South. As they get ready for opening night, they run into old acquaintances. They are reminded of past loves and pain. And also they attract a very new old problem, a vampire. Whew. It was weird to have a very serious film, and also a film that became very artistic, suddenly start talking about garlic and wooden stakes. It was like genre whiplash. You're like, whoa. But I think the point that Ryan Coogler is trying to make here is that vampires are just another problem for this community. In fact, it might not even be their worst problem. And maybe it's even a way out. Like, how bad is a deal with the devil if you're already in hell? I think that's a fascinating question. Really, really fascinating. That, you could almost say to some way that's like the thesis statement of the film. I really loved that. Again, everything Coogler does is intentional, and I'd like to point out that he also made the vampire in the film Irish. What an incredible choice. If you know your history, or if you've watched, speaking of shows, The Nick or The Gilded Age Season 2, you would know that the Irish were also heavily discriminated against in America for quite a long time. And they are often grouped with and sided with and worked alongside the Black community. So that's a really interesting choice that I think Coogler could have done even more with. I mean, I think, you have to understand that part of history to get that. But if you do, you're like, oh, that's genius. So I just unlocked a level maybe for you as well. It's also interesting that Coogler has made a very good Western here, but which focuses on the Black community. You see the white community at the edges of the film, just as this Black community sees them. They don't mix. They're there, but they're not. And then we also see a few Asian characters. The way the Asian characters are able to play both sides of the community, the Black and the white, is, it's subtle, but I thought that was very interesting. And then we briefly see some Native Americans who are super cool. Again, this is a very good Western, so it feels both familiar, but also fresh because of this different perspective. I really like that. In some ways, I think it's what many of us, myself, wanted to see from Killers of the Flower Moon, but did not. Huge missed opportunity, Marty. Now, how can a movie called Sinners be a good movie for Easter weekend? Well, you'll have to decide that for yourself. That's ultimately up to you. But again, as I said, I believe in God, but I'm not particularly religious. So, this movie, it did get me in that mind space. So, I felt it was, as I said, I thought it was a good Easter movie. It got me thinking about church and religion, and I guess maybe not even so much those elements themselves, but it got me thinking more about our relationship to that ideal. And that's really interesting. I think everyone, especially today, has a complex relationship with religion. And I think that what makes this movie so special and unique is that it embraces that. And feels there's nothing wrong with that, Like, you don't have to go to church every Sunday to know that there's a difference between right and wrong. You don't even have to act always on the difference between right and wrong to know that it's there, but it's in your mind. You know about it. And that's a big part of this movie. Like, when you're doing wrong sometimes. It's just really fascinating. Also, maybe a little sin is good for us. It's what makes us human. As the Bible says in the title of this movie, we're all sinners. And the movie really delves into that as well. The church can be a part of your life, but it doesn't have to take over your life completely, which is also a very interesting concept. But before you take your grandma or your grandpa to see Sinners for Easter weekend, again, I just want to be clear, there's some serious sinning on screen. Nothing particularly graphic, and grandma and grandpa might enjoy it. But, you might want to acknowledge it before you go into the theater, just so you're all on the same page, and it saves you a little bit of awkwardness. As I said, it's like a hard R. And there's plenty of cool vampire gore too, as well. The movie isn't super vampire-y, but I think if you're there to see a vampire movie, it does scratch that itch. Here, Michael B. Jordan plays twins, as we all know from the ad campaign. I thought this premiere photo was really funny that they mocked up. I thought that was great. And the VFX within the film are just so impressive. When we first meet them, they're passing a cigarette back and forth to each other. And I would love to know how that was done with both, not only the VFX, but how they filmed it, how Michael B. Jordan filmed both parts of that. That was really cool. It was such a small, subtle gesture, but it just blew my mind. Again, everything Coogler does is intentional. And I would like to point out that one twin wears red and the other wears blue. That's great. We talk a lot about actor-director partnerships, when we're covering movies and shows. And I think that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan is definitely up there with one of the best actor-director partnerships that we've ever seen in Hollywood. At first, I was like, hey, two Michael B. Jordans, that's fun. But I would say that pretty quickly, I did come to see them as two very different men. Jordan is very good with the swagger, as we all know, but he's also very good with raw emotion, which comes bubbling up by the end of the film for both brothers. Some of the third act sequences, are just really incredible. I wonder if these twins are based on any twins in the Bible. Again, I Googled it, right? And the closest I could come was maybe Jacob and Esau. One a skilled hunter, the other quiet and cunning. That kind of describes the smokestack twins, as they're called. There's also, of course, the famous twins Romulus and Remus from Roman mythology, and this movie made me think of all of that. If you're looking to write a paper on anything, or just for fun, like for school or for fun to study something, I highly suggest Sinners. There's a lot here. Another element that helps to really define the brothers is their taste in women. Hailee Steinfeld is fantastic here. I know some of you want to see this movie. When I was tweeting my initial thoughts last night, some of you were like, is Hailee Steinfeld good? I'm going just for Hailee Steinfeld. Well, you will be thrilled with this movie if that's the case. I wouldn't be surprised if she wins over a couple of new fans. It's not only definitely one of her best roles, but a very different side of her. She also feels very much like a 1930s movie star, not just with her amazing hair and silk dress, but even the way she moves. There's this one shot where she's running, really made an impression on me. It was really cool. She plays a mixed-race woman who can pass as white. And I don't want to give anything away about her character, but she has such an incredibly rich and interesting backstory. She could support her own movie or series, maybe. I mean, really an interesting character. The other love interest in the movie is Wunmi Mosaku, who is always good, but here Coogler makes her look particularly striking visually. She just really, the camera loves her. Loves Hailee Steinfeld as well, but it really loves Wunmi Mosaku. Both women come across as not only, again, visually dynamic and striking, but they're two very complex characters. Able to stand on their own, but they really reflect the two very different brothers. Coogler did a great job with female characters in his Black Panther movies. In some ways, the movies are famous for that. And he does here so again, not just with these two actresses, but also Jamie Lawson and Lee Jun Lee. They all do a wonderful job. There's newcomer Miles Canton. I gotta say, he has a very important supporting role, and he's a very good actor and singer. His role didn't quite sparkle for me as much as the rest of the cast did, but he serves his purpose. Then there's Omar Benson Miller. He made a very strong impression in a small role. But wow, Delroy Lindo. What a role, what a performance. This was incredible. A lot of people, you might recall, felt that he was snubbed for an Oscar nomination back during the pandemic for Into Five Bloods. And this would be a really great way for the Academy to make that wrong right. He should definitely be nominated for this. This supporting role has Oscar nomination written all over it, and I hope Warner Brothers will campaign for Lindo. What are Sinners Awards chances overall? I mean, it is a Ryan Coogler film, and he got Black Panther nominated for an Oscar. That's amazing. I don't know. I think it would be hard for a vampire movie to compete, I'm sorry to say. I mean, just look at the equally stunning Nosferatu, which just came out and competed in this year's Oscars. It only got 4 craft nominations, and it lost every single one of them. I think Lindo has a real shot. Again, it's really up to the studio to push and campaign. Campaigns matter. I hope that they push for Lindo. And hopefully, maybe I can see an original song nomination for Miles Canton's work. He did a nice job. And I actually really liked some of the, I believe it was the blues music that he sang. I was like, that's really pretty good. By the way, I didn't track Ludwig Göransson's score, which is unusual because his work is, typically stands out so much. He's won so many awards already. And it's interesting because, of course, he and Coogler came up together, working together. And here they are once again. But I thought his score didn't really make an impression on me this time. And then maybe original screenplay, because again, there's just so many amazing ideas and commentary going on here. As for box office, again, I'll be curious to see how audiences react to a film that's actually an emotionally complex one, full of strong commentary that runs so deep. It runs so deep, but it's not a horror film. I don't think it's a particularly scary movie. I mean, it has a couple of jump scares. I looked away a couple times. I was like, oh, this is going to be really scary. And now that I've seen the film, I don't think it was that scary. But I mean, that doesn't make it any less powerful. But it's not a scary horror movie. It's a movie that makes you think and think about, while you're watching it and then after. I'm still thinking about it. So if that appeals to you, along with great visuals and performances, and if you like Westerns and period pieces, then Sinners is definitely for you. If you liked Lovecraft, particularly the first episode of Lovecraft Country, and if you liked the Interview with the Vampire Show, you're going to like Sinners. It also leaves the door open for a sequel, and maybe even they could do a prequel if they wanted to. I would love to see an expansion of this universe. I hope the movie does well enough to warrant it, particularly a sequel. And that's all I'll say, because this is the non-spoiler review. All right, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.